Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good morning, good evening.
Good afternoon. So, welcome to our live stream, and let's introduce ourselves first, in case people don't know us. Let's go with Luke first. Wait, how can I? Hi, Luke. Oops.
So we got some people in the chat already. That's exciting.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. I don't know. Hi, Luke. Can you hear us? Hi, Mr.
Luke, can you? Hello? Oh, I think he's saying that the latency is killing him. Well, I'll start. Hey, everybody.
Okay.
I'm Joe. I'm the 3D Printing Professor. How about you guys? Yep. Luke Hatfield, the god of the 3D printing community. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. But now he's frozen right now. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. I figured it out. My laptop was connected to one of my Wi-Fi's on the far side of the house. So hopefully I'm better now. Sorry.
Yeah, much better now. Now I can truly see your face moving. You
All
just
right.
froze.
Great.
You know?
Yeah, I was just froze.
Yeah. So.
Oh, hey, where's my mono? Yeah, you know what? I don't have a tie on. I should get a tie. You know what? Although the problem is this shirt that I'm wearing doesn't have a collar, so I can't wear a tie with it. But you know,
just drape it over your neck. We'll know who you are.
I'll do that. This is my Mighty Ducks tie.
Right.
So
yeah, I can hear you guys much better now. For a little bit there, all I was hearing was that sporadic robot thing or whatever, and I was like, oh my god, I'm not even going to be able to have a conversation.
So, how are you guys? How's everything going?
well, how are things going up at Creality? You guys are shipping out the CR30s. Are you all done shipping those out now? Or can people buy a CR30 yet?
Currently, we have no. We didn't sell the CR30 on our official store. It's maybe the middle of the April.
All right, good.
So I don't know how much is privileged information or not, but the gist of it is they had a bad batch of belts and they were working on re-procuring them, and rather than just sending out bad product, they sort of held back to get things straightened out.
No, that's excellent.
So,
I love that.
The customer, there's some customers that were anxiously awaiting their Kickstarter ones that got held up some, and I'm sure they're not super happy, but personally I'd rather get it squared away than just get it out the door and then have to deal with it later.
I'm with you on that one. There was a guy who came up with a new sort of belt material, and I think he's got it in CR30 size. I'm kind of curious to try it out and see if it's a step up from the nylon belt. But it's exciting that Creality is kind of facilitating the next new evolution in 3D printing. I'm pumped to be a part of it when I get a chance.
Yes. And Bolo.
Yeah.
And said any special topic for today's discussion. So our topic today is our firmware. Oh no, forum. It's our forum.
Yeah, that's one of the topic. So let us start with that first. So currently we are running a forum, and we are trying to build a community where people can gather together and help each other. So instead of like chatting on the Facebook, and then the post will kind of be hidden after a while, we want to have a website that people can discuss and talks about the questions. So currently we are running this forum now. Yes, and then you can see on the top, like those are the questions and answers that people have. And we also have a guide sections that can help people better help people to deal with the problems. And we also have download file, which has a lot of firmware information on it. And also the tutorial we post, like the videos we think that's really helpful for helping people.
An interesting video.
Yes. So yes. So here's a question for Luke. We all know that you are really great and create an awesome guide about the 3D printing, like the problems and how to solve it. Like, would you like us to post the guide on the forum, on the guide section?
Absolutely. I'll work with you so that you can have it available. And we also have Jim from the EduTech. He has a series of videos based on the guide. So I'm just getting plugged into the forum. I know Bennett started it a while back, but I just hadn't had a lot of time to be in there. But I will make a concerted effort to come in there and hopefully help train some other people to do what I do, as well as helping users directly. I think the bigger improvement is teaching others to help others more than me just doing things, right? I mean, I can give them the basics, but it's better to have multiple people able to help instead of just sort of one person, you know?
Well, and you know, Luke, I'm kind of with you. You mentioned something about all forums, they're kind of hard to check and kind of hard to follow up on. And, you know, a lot of us get our help nowadays from Facebook, and I use Google Groups because they email me every day. But I do 100% agree with the sentiment that this forum is a much needed improvement over Facebook, because, you know, Facebook is terrible if you're searching for an answer, and this forum will eventually become a repository of the questions that people ask and the answers that'll get them there. So I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm looking forward to answering questions as best I can on this. I think that there are going to be questions that are specific to Creality, but also questions that are just general to 3D printing that will help everybody.
Right. So, yes, I think that's great. And we've tried, so this is the right place to do the help thing. I've tried in the Facebook groups. They have the different categories where I can put like troubleshooting things and help things. But most of the users, they only see what's in the feed in front of them. Yeah. And it's an ongoing thing. So we'll work on developing this. I think there's already like 5,000 users in there. That's not a small amount of people. I think at the Creality official user group, we're up to 80,000 members. So it would be nice if we can help people come to there to participate and grow the activity. Maybe this video will help a little bit with that. But yeah, it'll make it a little easier for me there, because like in the Facebook groups, you can save up to 10 links in your clipboard on your phone. And I most of the time have to work off my phone. I can't carry my laptop around with me all the time. So I have my 10 most recommended help things that I give. And I think some of the community is pretty tired of seeing the same thing over, especially the nozzle clog thing. Between the
they should stop asking the same dumb questions then. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, that's an ongoing fight in the Facebook groups. So for those that are here in the audience, we have such a large strata now of levels of knowledge in 3D printing, right? We have the people that have been at it 5 to 7 years that predate even me. I'm a newcomer, right? I've been here 3 years now, and I still sort of feel new. But then we have people that have been here 2 years and 1 year, and people that got it for Christmas, or people that just had a birthday and got their printers. And part of the work that I'm doing for Creality right now is, and this is really hard with COVID because everybody's been stuck at home. That doesn't make you really pleasant on an online personality where people can't really, fight back at you. So we've been working really hard to keep the attitude good in the community. And also one of the things we really try to push out of the general community is the attitude of Google search it or whatever to go find an answer. Because most of these people, they don't even know the question to ask. And if they read the answer without knowing that part, they even finding the answer doesn't help them, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we need people like myself and other people in the community that can come in. I dedicated the first part of my guide that's probably been the most helpful since my first rewrite was I did a beginner section, and it just goes through and I have pictures of the different parts of the printer so that people know what terminology to use to talk to the community, because we got this community that's got this advanced level of knowledge, and they come in and they're like, what is this thingy? I have trouble with it, right? And we have to bridge that gap to build the community and help people to have a good experience, right? Because I mean, it's great that I'm having a good time, but it's no good if all the new people come in just get pushed to the wayside, right? I mean, they should have their fun too. Just because they didn't buy an Ender 3 during the rush and weren't part of that mass growing of the community doesn't mean they can't have the same great experience and the great help that we built. You know, that's what this, for me, that's the community is a huge part of this company. I mean, it's great, the products.
Yes, definitely.
But if you talk to a lot of people, it's about the community for them. They'll tell you, I can get maybe a few more bells and whistles from another manufacturer thing, but they go to their user group and there's no activity and no people to help them. And like, what does that do me if I don't have people to help? With the Creality community, you can pretty much come on 24/7, and there'll be somebody with some level of knowledge that can try and help you through a problem, and that's huge from a usability standpoint, you know.
Well, and that also gives a great repository of information, because chances are, if you're running into a problem, somebody else has already run into it. Which is, again, where this forum is going to be. Whoops, sorry, I'm covering up my camera here. My phone just complained about dying, so I'm plugging it in. But yeah, this is, again, another great opportunity for us as a community to build this repository of knowledge for people.
Yes, and like as a newbie like me, I'm actually kind of new to this 3D printing area. So it will always be nice if I have a problem and there's a huge community and I can always find someone who can help me. That was a really great thing to do. So that's that's also one of the reasons why we want to like try to build a forum and like have a solid base where people can gather together and have a like strong communication and connections with each other. Yes, definitely. We are building the website. It's at a start phase right now, but we are going to get that work.
I did notice that there was some work still needing to be on there when I because every time I build a forum or every time I go onto a forum, I'm like, hey, let's put my picture on there. So I've got my branding on there, and I noticed that it had all the links in the profile, and one of those links was for my Google Plus profile. I was like, ooh. Google Plus is no longer a here.
Yeah, we will like.
Well, but you know, it's the software. You get the forum software. You load it up, and somebody into But I was like, that's interesting.
Right. So there was early questions on what is it about tonight. So a couple things.
Well, forum was one.
Yeah, the forum was one.
Yes.
The other thing is some question and answer with users, and as if we don't have enough question and answer stuff, I have a couple of things that I think in the general use thing that Joe and I can talk back and forth, sort of opinions on different things that we like to do or whatever. So we're going to try and keep it in.
I'm sure that Kathy and Ben can chime in on some of it too, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but in the long term, if this works out and everybody has a good time with it, we're sort of hoping to do this bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks, we'll try and do this if the community supports it. If we're just here talking to ourselves, then, I mean, I can do that anytime, right?
Yeah.
But if you're here now and you have questions, there will be a limit to what we can explain orally and figure out from your typing questions. But if you have a question you think you can get to us, send it up and we'll try and address it before things are
actually,
over.
I've got a good one right here, actually. Mike Bermudez on Twitter. Can you share my screen real fast?
Sure. This one. Which?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. No, that's one. That was
okay.
it. His CR6 apparently he bricked this board. He made a mistake and bricked this board, and wrong button. He wants to know if he can purchase this part to fix his mistake. According to what I'm reading, he admits that it's a mistake. He wants to buy a replacement on this board and doesn't know how to do that. Can you what can I tell him?
Wait,
It's
can
it's the op
see?
it's the it's the
It's for the
optical coupler
CR6.
board.
It's
It's
for
a
the
CR6
CR6. It's a breakout board for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're calling it an optical coupler board or opticoupler board.
Optic coupler board. Okay.
Yeah, so if you cannot find it at the Creality store on Amazon or at the Creality online official store, you should be able to contact your seller for warranty parts. Now you'll have to tell them you need to purchase it, and it's not a warranty claim, but they should be able to get one for you. And if that totally fails you, then this only works for one person, right? I am personally going through some user return printers, and I have a CR6 that had an electronic issue where something was damaged, and I have a board like that I will probably send to you for just paying me for the postage. So you'd have to find Luke Hatfield on the Facebook groups and send me a PM if you can't get it anywhere else, and we'll see if we can get you hooked up.
All right. Well, I hope that helps you. Hope that helps you, Mike. I hope that you're watching. If not, catch this on the replay, Mike. And yeah, I'll just say 17 minutes
Timestamp
into the replay, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great,
Hopefully,
awesome.
there's not a bunch more people that have done the same thing, because I literally only have one available, but I'm not that attached
Hopefully
to
not. And that's the only response that I have so far. So yes.
All right. So what is the difference between the CR6 nozzle and a standard nozzle? So they are both the same 6 millimeter. I'm going to call it coarse thread because Creality offers the fine thread in the CR10S Pro. It is a narrower tip profile, and I'm not sure why they went for that, but it seems to do a pretty good job of moving filament. Technically, you can use the other nozzles in them as well. The only thing is it might not fit in the silicone sock as well. But it's a newer style nozzle. They seem to work pretty good. I haven't had any clog or have any problems with them. But downloading stock firmware for CR10S from Creality website. Yeah, so Creality maintains a database for all of their firmware at crealityofficialonline.com, or if I get the link wrong, put it up in the comments because I'm probably busting it up. But if you go to the corporate Creality site, then you go to firmware and downloads. There's a whole section with each printer and what firmware it has. It is getting a little confusing now because we have the 8-bit boards, the older boards there, and the newer 32-bit boards as they're rolling out and all that. But generally speaking, there should be firmware for your machine there. Now, a CR10S, if it's got bricked firmware, from my knowledge, it has to have a bootloader installed. I don't think they came with a stock bootloader. You can go to TH3D online.
The CR10S needs to have a bootloader onto it, which is a pain in the neck, but not impossible.
It is. It's a pain in the butt. So you got to get a Arduino Uno R3 or an equivalent. They also have the USB IP adapters, but you have to burn a bootloader onto the board. Then you can load your firmware on.
You don't have to burn it on. You just have to load it on. You can then.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you say burn, it sounds permanent, and no, this is just you just have to temporarily load up your thing as a bootloader, then connect it, then boom, you're done.
Well, we got time, and we're here about learning tonight, right? So people will see this later, and maybe this is a learning opportunity. So it won't be as germane to the people with the newer printers because they can flash with a file by putting it into the USB drive. But on the older printers, if you have one of those, if you get an old one that doesn't have the firmware in it that says, hey, you can upload firmware, that's called the bootloader, right? It basically has a small section on the EEPROM that says, hey, I'm resident here. I'm the only firmware that's allowed. Nobody else can come in and play. What you do when you use the Arduino Uno or whatever to do that is you plug it directly into the board and you rewrite that file directly and say, hey, it's okay to have other firmware on here, which then allows you to put whatever other firmware you'd like, whether that be a Creality created firmware. If you go to the Marlin project and learn how to do that, however you go about it.
And again, this whole process is a pain in the neck, but you do it one time, you'll learn how to do it, and you're fine. So,
Yep.
you know, just buck up and do it if you got to do it, you know. By the
So
way, I
here's
got to
one.
say, Jacob, I sincerely hope that this is indeed your picture, because dang, you're a good-looking dude, man. I got to say, that is a
He's a handsome
Nice.
man.
yeah.
Okay, so we got a question from Edmund Martinez. When will thermal runaway be a standard firmware setup for your printers?
It already is for some of
It
them.
has been. So it's nothing's perfect, right? Because there was some new old stock out there at some points that kept surfacing or whatever. But for almost a full year now, everything new from the manufacturer has come out with the thermal runaway
Thermal runaway protection. Yep.
So everything now is. And you can also get firmware to get it on the older stuff, generally speaking.
Right.
Okay.
For those who don't know, what we're talking about, thermal runaway protection is a method for the firmware on the 3D printer to do a check to make sure that when it tells the nozzle to heat up, that it does heat up and at a reasonable rate. And I think some older versions of Marlin that implemented this kind of made it too sensitive. And so in testing environments, I think it was throwing false positives too much. Like it was getting to the point where, and I ran into this. I had a printer that I turned it on, and then I opened the door to my room next to it and just kind of blew a breeze past it, and it dropped like 2 degrees centigrade because of that, and it immediately triggered the thermal runaway protection. It was like, oh, it's not heating up when I say to heat up. So, come on, I was at 220 and I dropped to 218, and you freaked out. Just so it was turned off.
We've made some advances, right? So we've increased
Definitely.
the range that the thermal range can be without it defaulting. And there's that close-in cycle and teaching moment, right? So what this thermal runaway does is the printer's dumb, right? It doesn't know anything other than code. But what the code that we put in for thermal runaway says is if you're heating the heater, if you're not getting the right signal back from the thermistor that measures temperature in a certain time, something's gone wrong, shut it down.
That can be broken, yeah.
Because basically what happens is if the thermistor can't read it and the hot end's still going, it will heat until it basically melts down, which we don't want. So that's what that relationship is.
I had an experience like that one time with Replicator 1. This was like 8 years ago, and I pulled out the thermal heater, and I just set it in the tube where the filament goes into. I just set it there for a place to set it, and then I forgot that I had set it there, and I ran a test, and it started heating up, and all of a sudden I'm going, something stinks in here, and I look over, and it's melting the ABS on top, and it's red hot. And I was like, oh, unplug and move that out of the way with a pair of, it was dumb. But those old printers didn't have thermal runaway protection, so all it knew was it turns to the temperature sensor, and it says, what temperature are you? And it goes, room temperature. And it goes, okay, heater, heat up. What temperature are you now? Still room temperature. Okay, keep heating up. And it's heating up over here, melting the ABS plastic in my nozzle, in my feed. Yeah, no, so dumb. So dumb.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it was my nose that told me that there was a problem.
That's kind of dangerous though.
Yeah,
Like
so
what happened
asking
if
about
you-
filament change options with Creality printers. So there are some of the printers that do have filament change built into the current firmware.
This is in Marlin 2, right?
Yeah, so most
Yeah.
everything now has Marlin 2. Not to bag on the Creality firmware, but occasionally it's not as robust as it could be, right? So sometimes it works properly and sometimes it doesn't. I'm actually getting ready to sort of put together a package of notes on what I think we should do with the values for that. Because there's certain things when you do filament change that can help. Like I've got a user right now, he's doing a color change, and every time he goes to do a color change, because his firmware doesn't lock the extruders at filament change, he bumps the head over, then it loses position when it goes back to the print, right? So the long term is we hopefully set up the firmware so that when it goes to the lock position or goes to the park position, it locks, and as long as you don't manhandle it, theoretically you should get that filament changed out and be able to return to position. Or if we have quality enough homing, we could work it out if we chose to as a community. This is a big if, right?
Yeah. This is not something that has happened yet, but could happen as a community. Right. And
right.
I mean, potentially as a community, we could get closed circuit feedback systems, so we could have servos essentially on everything. You know, yes, there are other options, but I would like to rehome before continuing printing.
Right. So that the whole thing with that, because it's the technology is available to do it now, right? The only thing that you risk, and that was what I was getting to, what you risk. So if you home only XY, because you're already at or above the print when you go to do a filament swap.
Yeah.
The only thing you got to worry about is your repeatability of your end stop, right? Yeah. So depending on if it's an optical end stop or a mechanical end stop, and how fast it's homing and how hard it's hitting it, how much it repeats, it could basically lock in at a different position than it did the first time when it started the print. So that's where we have to decide, do we want to do that cycle and slow the feeds down so that we sort of get a more repeatable thing? And are we comfortable with it? Or, is everybody, only half of the people getting acceptable prints by using that method or not? These are the things that take time to work out, right? Because half of the people will enjoy it. They'll be like, it works great for me. And the other half where things aren't working great for them, they can't use it, and it's built into the firmware, so that's how hard it is to work these things out. We almost have to use the quote unquote rep and community developing the custom stuff, and then once it's stable, then we go, hey, Creality, this is stable, everybody in the community wants it, let's integrate it into your firmware at the factory. And we're getting that closer and closer relationship, and I got some stuff I can't talk about right now, but we're trying to even close that gap even more, but it's an ongoing process.
This is very exciting. Filament oilers. So I have heard of filament oilers since the beginning of 3D print. Luke was talking about some people. I've been in 3D printing for 8 years, and I think that's when the first filament oilers came around. And the idea was that you can have a little enclosure that your filament goes through with a sponge, and then you put a couple of drops of vegetable oil on there, and the vegetable oil will lubricate the filament, and that lubricated filament will not stick to the side of your feed tube, and the oil will burn off before it lays down the filament, and so you'll get all the benefits and everything. Filament oilers are not as necessary for 3D printers that have PTFE tubes down the feed tube. Now, the PTFE, generally speaking, does the lubrication well enough, and if you oil it, all you're going to do is make your PTFE tube greasy, which isn't. Okay.
I totally agree with that statement, and then I'm also going to add on an experience that somebody else had that they shared with me. So I don't really know Chep personally, but you know who Chep is on YouTube.
Chuck Helberg, yes.
Yeah, Chuck Helberg. So Chuck in testing my hot end fix, so I have that fix where I trap a piece of PTFE in the hot end rather than using the teeth of the fitting to hold it in. So it compresses it. But what Chuck found out, and what everybody who uses the fix generally knows, is over maybe 3 to 5 months, depending on what temperatures you're working at and whatever, over time that PTFE will char, and the char causes a slight drag. So Chuck, going back to the old days, so he's got my hot end fix with the original piece of Capricorn tubing he put in there when he set it up. He ran it for, and don't quote me on this, but it was somewhere between 14 and 16 months with that same insert, because he did a little bit of oiling and it was hydrating the PTFE so he didn't get that drag. So it can still sort of be effective. I'm not saying to go do it or whatever, but
yeah,
there, if, in that particular case, the only reason he took that machine apart was he was auditing my work with the hot end fix to see if it was, if it was something he should be sharing with his users. And it did. And his improvement to it, which it was an improvement, is he was using the oiler and he went over a year, same nozzle, same PTFE, no changes. I mean, that's pretty good from where I sit at,
that sounds really good, actually. And that would be enough for me to say, yeah, go ahead and get an oiler. I've never done an oiler, but I have occasionally put a drop of oil on the tip of my filament before I fed it in, and that usually lubricates the system for some length of time. Now, I will also say that the oiler method, the oiling your filament, was what came up with back when we were all using solid steel, no PTFE liners, and so using a little bit of oil on that was a great benefit to it.
So let's expound on that a little bit, because there's a trend right now. All of the, I'm going to call them modders, the guys that have to modify their machine. It can't be good when it arrives stock. These are the guys that order a Creality machine. They go to the community. They're like, I'm putting on all metal hot end. I'm doing direct drive. I'm doing an aftermarket.
And what drives me crazy about these folks is they're the ones who come onto the forum and they're like, hey, the printer's not working. Well, what did you do to it? Everything. Did you ever try running it stock? Could you try for like 5 seconds running it stock so that we can figure out which one of your mods broke it?
Yeah. So there is that. But the reason I bring that up is, so probably 80% of the help that I think that I give the community, and people might say differently, but I mean, I have some really great stuff on how to mechanically adjust the printers and that stuff is great. It has a place. But most of the time when I'm helping people, it's because they're having extrusion issues, right? So I have help for those that have the PTFE line. We can show them how to either use the nozzle or using the fitting to compress it to get printing a little bit better. And if they can do that, then they can print my hot end fix and get fixed or whatever. But occasionally I'll get somebody like, you just recommended your hot end fix and I got an all metal hot end, and I already have my reply ready for them because I go old school. You need to season all metal hot ends that are having trouble. I'm only going to say having trouble with a high temp vegetable oil. I prefer avocado because it's a 500 degrees C rated oil. It's more expensive. You can use other high temp vegetable oils. Do you on what you want? But it's like seasoning a cast iron pan. What do you do with a cast iron pan? You season it with an oil to the point where things don't stick to it. You can do the exact same thing to an all metal hot end. And that takes care of that small zone where it's hanging up on your retraction or in that melt zone where maybe you got a little heat creep. It will stop that problem where the PTFE would just let it go because it's slick. Now you're using the oil to do the same thing. So
it's good advice. That's good advice. I like it. All right. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hello, Ching Ming Tang.
Matt Donworth, I haven't seen him for a little while. I hope you're doing better, Matt. Matt, I hope it isn't PII or whatever, but Matt had gotten COVID. And
are we live on YouTube? Because I did. YouTube is where
It should be outputting. When I double checked the setup, it was outputting on YouTube and on the Facebook both.
Awesome.
Yes.
I'm just not seeing any comments from YouTube. I wonder if we're just not seeing it.
I don't know. There's a little arrow beside the thing. You can choose which ones you see. You can have.
Nope. There's just nobody chatting on
destinations.
YouTube. There's nobody watching on YouTube. So,
Yep.
YouTube.
Oh.
Who YouTube anymore?
Yeah, they'll catch it in the replay.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
So I think no more questions here.
Yes.
Instead of talking about the question, what are the great projects are you working on right now? Do you
Well,
have
you guys know I'm chomping at the bit to tell you about my great project, but
Go ahead, roll it out.
well, I've been working on printed block, and I do want to say, since I got you guys here, I would be very honored if you guys would include. This is an oversized printed block. I printed it very big. They're actually normally only this big. This is, I mean, if I hold them like this, they look about the same. There we go. No, but I printed one really big so I could demonstrate. About a year ago, I came up with this building block for 3D printing, and this is a building block that can only be made with 3D printing. It's got a very complicated internal structure, which I printed this one cut away so that you can see it. And the clip is more than just, a standard clip. It's also got some complex geometry on it. But that way it can clip in, this way and it'll snap in, or it can snap in this way and it will snap in. And either way it connects, and you can build with printed blocks in 3 dimensions.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
And so now these are available on Thingiverse, My Mini Factory, Prusa printers. They're available all over. And I probably shouldn't have mentioned that it's on that site, your competitors. But I made it available everywhere. And I would be like,
Joseph would be upset, but he's not really a factor for Creality.
I doubt that we'll be seeing him in chat. But if you guys were willing to put a small set of 3 printed blocks and their connectors, I've already got them all plated for you as a test print. Like, I would be ecstatic to see that on somebody's SD card someday, because that's why I put them out there. But in addition to the blocks, I started making these accessories. So this has got some of the printed blocks down here, but then we've got like spaceship wings and parts. And I did a whole Kickstarter with robots and mechs, and we did that, and that was last year.
Okay.
This year, I'm getting ready to launch beasts, animals. I was going to show it. There we go. So that's the printed block lion. The rest of them are out in the shed. If you would rather share the screen, I think that would probably be good.
Share screen.
Yeah, that.
There you go.
Yep, that. Okay. Unfortunately, these connectors for some reason are a little bit loose. I know why they are, but still. And actually, let me. There we go. So if you go to printablock.com right now, it's going to redirect to the Kickstarter, and you can be notified to know when it launches. And the basic idea is here's the Kickstarter. Got a little bit about the printed blocks here, a little bit about the. Oh man. Can we look at that? Oh, it's small. But yeah, this is a bunch of printed block mechs that a friend of mine downloaded and printed, and then let his kids build, and they made all kinds of cool stuff. This year we're doing animals, and I made this lion just to kind of test the waters, and then I made a snail. And just let me. Okay, the lion required the creation of 10 additional custom parts. It's got 12 points of articulation. It is a complex model, but everybody's losing their mind for that snail. They love that snail, man. I don't know.
You got to have that viral model, then the public gets to choose it, not you.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's absolutely true. But just like my other Kickstarters, the bigger it does, the better it does, the more sets there will be, the more things that I will be releasing. And it's just a $10 pledge to get in and get all those models when they kick out. And Kathy, you mentioned the video. I've changed the video a little bit on here. Do you think I could hit play? Do you think it would make a upload to Creality Cloud? Yeah, I should do that. I should absolutely do that.
Yeah,
Do you think I could hit play on this video? Do you think it'll work?
Nothing works. Wait.
Hold on. Let's see. I'm going to hit play and see if it works.
Oh, okay.
So there's the new video. It starts with it being 3D printed. The old video did not start with the 3D print. And then my daughter assembling that rocket.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this exact same. This is the model that she's assembling here. I've got it right here. And then it goes flying off to play with the other one.
I like this because you can develop it to be like the expensive. We won't say the 4-letter name of that block company stuff where you got to pay for all these special.
We'll
kits.
just say common building block.
If you have a friend or family that has a 3D printer, you can potentially make what you want.
Well, and yeah, I mean, while it is a specific set, like there's no reason that you have to build it this specific way. You can put it together any way that you want. They're a building block. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a little bit of
child play
in there, but it's also inspired a little bit by Power Rangers and Sentai.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there's a she don't care. Gonna take a shot of opportunity.
Oh, I like this part.
Yeah.
And the rest of this is just me talking about the printed blocks and the set. So yeah, that's the new video for it. Slightly different, but a lot better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that Kickstarter starts tomorrow officially, correct?
No, I think it's officially going to start next week. I'm going to give it. Okay. I'm going to give it a week and maybe launch it next Wednesday or Thursday.
So see that, folks. If you showed up today, you got to find out before it even came out.
That's right. So. Darn straight. And again, go to printerblock.com, sign up to be notified when it launches. If that hits 100, we're good to go. I'm going to shoot it off, and we'll see what happens.
All right. And if you're done with that, I got a question from Makers Hub I was getting ready to look at. So I'll read his question, and then we'll discuss it. So it says, let's talk future printers. Are they getting better, faster? Why are you not looking for new outlets when it comes to what should be added by a Marlin, RepRap, etc.? Why can't we have a user adaptive board? So I'm going to compartmentalize that just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's being asked here.
I got a pretty good idea. So here's what they're asking. We've got enough printers and enough backbone of Marlin right now that rather than having 5 different firmwares or whatever, why not have a firmware where you can just go into a menu and say, I added a BL Touch, or I added a capacitive sensor, or I added this, and let's go, right? That's what they want. And I think that that's a goal to strive for, but we're not there yet. Marlin covers such a huge broad band of things. And then you also have, not everybody's on Marlin, right? I mean, Creality is, and so we generally talk Marlin, but there's a whole group of people in the rep community that's never put Marlin on their printer, right? So they're using different firmwares and stuff for their stuff. So there's a lot of things that would have to happen to get that point. But I totally am on board with, at least for manufactured options, and this is something that I can probably talk with the engineering team internally about. We should be able to, if we're putting it to go to a certain pinout on the printers, we should be able to have the same firmware and have a toggle that says use BL Touch, and then it changes to use that. And, that's an achievable goal.
That opens up the opportunity from a manufacturing standpoint of having a 3D printer that you sell that is just bare bones, absolutely bare bones, But hey, you want to have auto bed leveling? Let's sell you the BL Touch attachment, and all you do is plug it in, and all of a sudden you got BL Touch. Or let's sell you the heated build plate attachment, and you plug it in, and it will work. Or let's sell you the whatever you want to do to go from a base model to a high-end model. Now, one downside to that is that so much of what makes a difference in your 3D printer is not those little add-ons, but it's the root of it. How sturdy is your frame? Are you just making it out of simple 2020 extrusions, or are you doing something a little bit more rigid? Have you got two smooth rods moving the Y, or are you doing it with just wheels, or are you using linear rods? It's that base hardware that this question isn't going to address that will make the biggest difference. Not to say that I discourage this, because I would love to see this too.
Right. So we love your idea about that. And I think there's a tinge, if I'm reading between the lines here, about the bigger, better, newer, what's coming, right? So Creality just released the printer belt that was not their innovation, but they engaged the open source community, because it was an open source design. They even, I'm pretty sure, have engaged the person who initiated the project and included them as
Knack Designs.
Yeah, and I think that they've included him, so he didn't feel like they just took his thing and stole it from him. That's great.
I follow him on Twitter. I've been following him since I saw his belt printer at East Coast Rep Rat Festival, and it's wonderful because people will be asking him questions about the CR30, and he will usually go, well, hey, listen, ask Naomi Wu about this stuff. She took my design and ran with it. I just made this original pretty little prototype. So he's totally on board with it, and I love it.
Yeah, that's great. So my personal vision of the future, right? One is, we've got the resin printers. I would love to see a prosumer-based sintering metal, the deposited metal type of thing. Whether that's going to get down to a level that users can afford, I don't know. The cheapest unit I know of right now in that sort of SLA program is between 12 and 15,000. That's not entry level, but from a manufacturer standpoint, to make metal prototypes, all metal prototypes for 15 grand, I mean, that's a steal, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But so my personal view, this is going way forward in the future. We haven't got there with the firmware and the controls yet. So I was in the CNC community, right? And we're going to have to borrow some stuff from the CNC community to do what I want to do, and where I think the final iteration of what we're going to see in the ultimate 3D printer is going to be. And I love the printer belt. It's a great thing, but it's not going to be a printer belt. What we're going to have is essentially what in subtractive machining is called a 5-axis machine. So you're going to have a rotary plate that can also swivel around, and then you're going to have a mechanical arm that can also address it. So the two of them can work together and make very advanced geometry so you don't need support, right? If you're printing in the right orientation with the right amount of cooling, you no longer need support, because you can sort of get everything setting so the gravity is not trying to defeat it as you deposit it, right?
Well,
what I think, I'm going to add one thing and then go ahead.
Yeah.
The thing that we need to make this happen, and this is a call out to the RepRap community, because I'm starting to see the components maybe at the level we can afford coming out, is we need rotary encoders to go with our stepper motors, so that it has a way to know where it's at and where it's going, or if it gets knocked, how to get back. If we can get those to an affordable component level.
You're talking about a closed system movement feedback system.
Yeah, so with a CNC machine, it has what they call a linear encoder, right? So it's got a big long rail, and you can turn it on with the head anywhere on it, and when it turns on, it says, hey, I'm at the head position here on that rail, and I know where I'm at. Same thing with these rotary encoders. If you had them set up right, where you had it knew where its home position was, And when you turned it on, if it's not there, it recognizes where it's at. It could actually start up out of position and know where it's at. That's the one step
and the other
we're
advantage of
missing
that is
between.
if you bump it or move it, it can immediately go, whoa, hold on, I'm not in position, and get back into position. So it becomes a very sturdy way to very reactive and sturdy way to work. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a way to recover, because right now, all it knows is go to this point, and from where I start here, go to this movement, and then do that movement. And if it loses track somewhere, it doesn't know how to get back. It doesn't know where this is anymore. That would give us the ability to get back, right? Or to understand where it's at.
So let me just say, I have on my shelf here a very excellent book called 3D Printer Engineering by my friend Ryan Carlisle. I don't know if there it is. There's Ryan Carlisle, 3D Printing Engineering, and he talks about all the different movement system, and he talks about I think the movement system that you're more or less describing, except he doesn't talk about it in 6-axis terms. What's it called? I don't remember. Cantilever. Anyways, the problem that you run into with this system. So, two things. One, I don't think that you need to have the bed move. I think you can have the bed remain stationary as long as the head has full access of movement and can print anywhere. Because we saw somebody this week on Twitter take a CR30 and mount it on the wall, and it was just printing, falling straight down the wall.
Yeah.
And the orientation doesn't matter to it, because we're taking plastic and we're sticking it to plastic. If you turn the nozzle up, and people have been doing this for years, right? They hang their 3D printers on the ceiling.
I took it to the last position that it's going to end up at, because first you're going to have what technically would be a 4-axis. You're going to have a build plate with an arm, the articulating arm that can access it, right?
Right.
When you get that 5th axis of movement, it's being able to also rotate that at the same time this way and this way, right? So
well, I think
it doesn't have to have that to do that.
Axes, but we're going to need it on the arm, I think. But here's the problem. An arm, the further out from any anchoring point that it gets, the less stable that motion gets.
Absolutely.
And so you know, as much as I love this idea, we need to think of stability. So here's my vision of the future for 3D printing. I don't worry about how the sausage is made. I don't worry about what specific hardware is going to be the future of 3D printing. You know, there will come a day when we'll get a Star Trek replicator, and we'll just have some sort of cloud of hydrogen atoms that combine to whatever atoms we want in the right place. And we're not thinking about extruder heads anymore, because that's not the technology that's being used. But
so that already exists.
I do think that these advancements are important, but I'm more interested in making the user experience easier. I think the Creality Cloud is a fantastic start to this. When we can get to the point when a person can look at a website or look at a app on their phone and go, "Ooh, I want that," and the printer jumps to life and starts making it for them. That I think is the advancements we need to focus on.
That's the world that I'm trying to bridge right now till we come up with better tools, right? So, like these user returns I've got, probably 2 out of 10 have mechanical problems, legit mechanical problems, generally probably from something they did, but they're broken, right? The other 8, the people open the box, realize it's not a Star Trek replicator, and close the box and send it back, right? And you know, you can buy an Ultimaker for $2,000 that's pretty much set up, and you just add the filament or whatever. Not everybody's going to spend the $2,000.
I've used the $2,000 Ultimakers. I can tell you they are no easier to use.
Right. I get this question all the time. How much do I have to spend to get a printer where I don't have to do this maintenance and stuff? And unfortunately, the answer still is there's no amount of money. You can buy a $1.2 million Stratasys, and it's sold with a service contract, because they have to come out and maintain it when things don't go right. Right. My work has a Lulz
machines.
My work has a Lulzbot printer. They paid $5,000 for it. Right. We're a Federal Power Administration You know, that was not a big expenditure for them, but they thought they were spending up instead of getting a cheaper user class machine, right? As soon as we get done with COVID, I'm going to be fixing it so that it can actually work for them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not currently working. They've been on sort of back and forth with Lowsbot support for 9 months before they came and found out about me and asked me to potentially help. And then COVID broke loose, so I didn't get to do anything with it. But whenever we get back, you know, I'll deal with it. But
I feel it should be mentioned that there are 3D printers out there that will go a longer time before needing maintenance than other 3D
absolutely.
printers. There. The part of the reason why the Ender 3 is so cheap is because it's understood that you're going to end up having to fix it sooner rather than later. But if you're up for that, an Ender 3 is a great choice because it's a lot of fun to actually fix the printers.
It's low risk, high reward. I mean,
yes, exactly.
You're under $200 to buy the machine, and other than the newer 32-bit boards, I think they're breaking $40 now. But the most expensive part is that, right? There's nothing more expensive than that if it breaks to fix.
And I will say, Ender 3, assuming that you assemble it properly and level the bed properly, will usually work out of the box for most people.
Yeah, if you follow my setup and assembly guide and put my hot end fix in it, you can outprint most of those Ultimakers all day long. And I'm not bragging.
I absolutely agree.
It's been proven. You know.
Yeah, so I have an Ultimaker. We have it at the makerspace. I'm not super in love with it as a machine. You know, mind you, we have other brands that I'm not going to mention in this forum that we use more often than the Ultimaker. But I'm not sure that the Ultimaker is worth $2,000, especially with Creality coming out with such great machines at a reasonable price to compete with them.
Yep, and I won't drag Prusa into it, but I'm still amazed that Prusa hasn't come out beyond those aftermarket kits or whatever with some sort of rigid frame past the old i3 that was out of date 5 years ago. You know,
I'll bring Prusa into it. I think Prusa needs to update their plan. They're still running on a plan that worked great for them 4 years ago, but I've got a Prusa half built right now, and it is still half built, and it's been half built for a month. And the fact that I haven't printed with it. Meanwhile, I've printed tons with other printers.
Right, and this isn't so people. I don't hate Prusa, right? He was sort of a jerk to me when I tried to meet him at Rip Rap Festival. It's just between him and I, right?
I met him too.
Yeah.
He's not a jerk. He's just
standoffish.
I think it's a language barrier more than anything.
Yeah. So anyhow, but I've had a couple of I'll call them clients, right? I don't charge hardly anything to help people, but I've had people come to me for help. They get frustrated, like, I'm going to go buy the Prusa, right? They buy the Prusa, and they find out that didn't solve the problems, you know? And not to pick on them, but if you have a stock setup Mark III, if you want to get into the hot end, you're like 16 fasteners in to look at it, right?
Yeah.
The new Ender 3 B2, it takes one screw to undo it and get the bulk of the fan assembly up there and have access to the hot end. Yeah, granted, it doesn't have all the but you don't need you don't have to make it an afternoon project if you got to get at the hot end, you know. And I'm not saying that their design isn't great, because they're proven. If you get their setup right and everything goes well, it goes okay, right? Just like our machines, you set them up and go well, but you're still not buying your way out of the maintenance. That's really the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
And in a way, you can end up with more difficult maintenance, especially for those that are not super mechanically based. It's just not the same.
No, I have used other printers that cost a lot more, and you maintain them a lot less often. But you're right. The time that I had to take apart my Raise 3D to replace a ribbon cable that wore out over time, I had to disassemble that thing down to its friggin' frame. You know, it was a lot of work to do it. It took me all day to do it. Mind you, it was kind of fun, but you're not escaping maintenance by paying more for a 3D printer. You're just maybe kicking that can a little bit further down the road, for sure.
All right. Yeah, I haven't seen a bunch more questions come up.
Well, let's see. Xun Yan Ao mentioned something about having an Ultimaker at school and its use of 2.85 millimeter filament. So I think it's interesting. I want to talk briefly about 2.85 millimeter filament. At the start of 3D printing, we used 2.85 millimeter filament simply because that was easy to come by. And then somebody got the bright idea to switch to a thinner filament. And I don't know. Okay, so the advantage to thicker filament is that if you're using a Bowden system, you can push it further along there. And because it's a thicker filament, you get a more rigid push. So you could potentially use softer filaments for it. Although in the chat, guys, if you guys have any suggestions for a project to use soft and flexible filaments with, I'm all ears, because doggone if I found a good project for soft filament that I actually like. But
I've been playing around with making car mats for a guy. He can sign me to make car mats for a Lexus that he can't get car mats for, so I'm printing them on a CR10 Max.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like one-off projects, I can see the Chibi Malls printing flexible filament really cute, but the thinner filament gets a more complete melt with less energy, and that I think is part of the reason why we switched to it, because it's really easy to melt it and go faster because it's a lot less filament. It's a lot smaller cross section, so we can melt it faster with less energy, and we can print faster with thinner filament. And so the standard quickly became 1.75. Right. 2.85 isn't a bad filament. It's just kind of a pain in the neck to have to keep two filament stocks on hand, one for your Ultimaker and one for your everything else.
Yeah, that's annoying. So, and plus, we've come a long ways with what's affordably available, right? So pretty much anybody now can afford a $30 dual drive, which means it's got two gears driving, two hobs with the interlinking gear driving them together. With that and a good Bowden system with no extra resistance in the hot end, you can print Ninja Flex with it all day long and not have any major problems, as long as
you just got to print it slow. You just got to, especially if you're going to do Ninja Flex.
I'm going to argue. Well, I have never bought Ninja Flex, but I've used some that are pretty close on the floppy scale.
You can sometimes push it up to 60 millimeters per second, but trust me, you get the Ninja Flex. In fact, I got a roll of Ninja Flex. Hold on for a second. Right here.
Yeah. I traditionally, my starting point for TPU is 50 millimeters a second. And I still have arguments to this day with folks that tell me that if you print TPU, you can't use retraction, right? That is that's a bunch of horse bucky, because I do it all the time. You have to do the distance right and time it right, because you got to think like you're retracting a rubber band instead of a rigid object. If you do it right, I use retraction with it. I've done phone covers where I do built-in support, and it's easier to take off than regular PLA supports when I'm done, and I've got my full thing and hardly any inner lines from the support or anything, you know. Yeah.
So this is Ninja Flex. Like it's like Twizzlers. Okay, it's super soft. You ain't printing this at 50 millimeters per second on a Bowden system. You need a direct drive to even think about that. Although I will say this. If you do have some flexible filament and you feel like your nozzle has a clog, load the flexible filament in there, let it cool completely, and then grab hold of that flexible filament with a pair of needle nose pliers or just regular pliers and yank it out. And if it cools completely, it will grab hold of all the goobers that are clogging up your nozzle, and it'll yank it out. And I mean, you're going to have to pull, and you're going to have to stretch, and you're going to think that you're breaking your system, but you're not, because it's the TPU that's stretching. And just like a rubber band, it's going to pull itself off that edge and just plunk, and it's going to take all the goobers with it. This stuff, best stuff for cleaning your nozzles.
I do a similar thing. So I call it an atomic cold pull. So
the atomic cold pull, you do it at about 100. This, do it cold. Do it room temperature.
I do it with nylon with a fully cold hot end.
Ooh.
But now listen, everybody listening, put your ears on.
Yep.
This does not work if you have a 1.9 millimeter Capricorn tubing, and your hot end area is 2 millimeters in diameter. It'll get stuck. Right.
Back in the day, I used to use ABS for that because ABS would shrink from the walls naturally, and you could do the cold pull with ABS. So it's a material that shrinks. PLA doesn't shrink, not nearly enough for this. So,
but anyhow, so there's multiple ways to do the cold pull thing, and it'll really clean all of the stuff that's sort of goobered up on the inside of your hot end. And they also have, I don't use it a ton, but I was using 3D Warhorse, and they provide that nozzle cleaning material.
Yes, I have some of that over here as well. It's not quite within reach, but I've got
some. I can't say I use it all the time, and I can't say that I even have the quote unquote perfect setup for using it. But if I notice I'm just getting a slight bit of minor under extrusion that might just be some buildup on the sidewalls or whatever, I'll run some of that through, and it seems to clear it up. So, and that stuff's not super expensive if you go to buy it a la carte on Amazon or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I find you don't do a cold pull with that stuff. You just feed it through, and somehow it works itself around the goobers, dries them right out, and then you just snip it off, push it through, and load your next thing filament. When the color comes out right, you're good to go.
Yeah. Makers Hub is wanting me to design this new 5-axis machine on the
Hey, I want you to design it as well.
Yeah, so we already discussed it's going to have to be very accurate, depending on how many arms and how many joints. You have accumulated error when you get out to the end. We'll have to get through what's the most affordable rigid setup that we can afford at our price point, right? That's what it comes down to. And
yes,
and we can talk about that stuff later. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now because I could take you for another 3 hours and just ferret out that thought, right?
Well, and I
think it's not really fair to everybody to do that. But.
I think that an exploration like this is an important part of the development of 3D printing. I'm excited that Creality jumped onto the CR30 because it was experimental, and it's something that nobody has done, and it's something that we didn't know would work. But by putting it out there in a consumer-ready product, we're moving 3D printing forward. Is this going to be where 3D printing is going to go in the future? Probably not, but maybe. I mean, this will definitely feed into it.
There's even exploration to be done within the CR30 platform, right?
Absolutely.
So currently with the software we're using and how everybody's generally doing it, and some of you say, "Oh, somebody's already doing what you said." I don't want to hear from you people. Eventually, not only are we going to have the belt feed one direction, we'll figure out how to reverse it and to do more advanced things. And especially once the patent is up on having the gantry vertical on the belt feed, because Stratasys holds that patent. That's the only reason we have to lean them over or whatever. But once all those obstacles clear, you'll be able to have your print head up above, and now your bed can move forward and backwards and up and down and side to side. And there's a lot more you can do with that, right?
Well, what I would like to see, because one problem that I'm running into is that the printer blocks are specifically designed to print in Z orientation. All of the overhangs are designed to print in Z orientation. They do not work on the CR30 right now. This block, because of where the overhangs are, that complicated internal geometry that I was showing off earlier.
Not to oversimplify things, but as long as you've got a decent cooling setup on it, you print a 45 degree or whatever matches the gantry's angle waste block underneath of it, and then it gets to print just like you're printing it now.
Right.
So
what I would have to do is
more
have
waste,
a little lift to create that. I could do it. But what if, and I know that the current CR30 won't do this, but what if the nozzle wasn't as tilted? What if the build plane was here, but the nozzle was, here? So that it could potentially have the bed move forward and backward like a traditional Y, except it's a belt, and have it print layer by layer. It's just the only thing is, as it goes up in the Z, it's going up at an angle, so it's also going to have to move the bed to line up with it. We could potentially do traditional layer by layer building on that. We just have to make sure that we can go forward and backward far enough for our bed, and then when we're done, spit that one out and do the next one. I don't think the CR30 could do it as it is, but maybe we could get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, the bigger problem right now is somebody writing software to do that because we're not there with the slicing. But yeah, those are things that eventually over time we're going to be able to develop, right? We'll be able to go back and forth on the belt drive instead of just one direction. And once we're not, so here's an idea for you. Once Stratasys gets their patent undone on being able to be vertical above your traveling belt, right? Once that thing is gone, what if we put a pivot on our gantry? And even within the program, as it's moving back and forward, if we wanted to, we can rock it forward or backwards.
Oh, wouldn't that be
45
cool?
degrees, right?
Yeah.
So now we can play around with getting more towards the side of things when we want to, instead of being on top of things. And once the software gets with that, we can. I don't know
how we turn it around, but the CR30 that angled does have the ability to print like at 90 degrees to the build plate. And so maybe we could print flat, and then when we get to something that needs to be angled, angle it and print to that direction on it and get the advantage of going. And hey, maybe we can angle it the other direction and go. I don't know. We'd have to pivot this sucker in the middle. I don't know how that would leave them.
No, that's what I'm proposing.
That's a problem for the future to solve.
You put it on a pivot in the middle, and you got 2 Z screws that drive it one way or the other to get it to your.
Sounds like a plan to me.
But we got to get past the patents. That's the bigger problem right now.
Well,
I'm gonna have people dreaming for days now.
Yeah.
This is the kind of noise I have in my head that I quietly chew on when I'm helping somebody that just can't get their nozzle to extrude filament.
Boy, Ben and you two are just saints for just sitting there and listen to us talking 1,000 miles per hour in English. I'm sorry, we're not including you on our nerd talk.
But we learn a lot actually.
Yes,
we are focusing and listening to all your talk.
Yes,
we learn a lot.
Thank you for the interesting and such professional opinions.
Yes.
Well, our opinions are professional. Boy, I don't know.
To us, to
the newbies like us.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I'm trying to embrace right now is we have this stratification. We have senior people and mid-level people and new people, and we need to all work cohesively. And part of what I'm literally fighting in the community is getting those older people that are upset when somebody comes in. They're like, you can just Google that and you can find it, and it's right there, right? They don't know what that is. I can take them right there and they can read it, and they still don't know what they're looking at. And that's the game that I play, right?
There's an online.
So we need people like Joe making nice videos that we can send them to. Creality is working on making the machines better to use. I'm working with Creality and people like Joe and other people and the Facebook community and other people there to improve it. And that's what in the end, I like the community just as much as I like the printers. Like some people don't understand and don't hate me, but I have more printers than I can run at any one time. I mean, they're just the fact of life, right?
Yeah.
Don't hate me for it. I have a lot of these machines I have is for long-term use. So when the users have problems, I experience them with them and I can help resolve them for them, right?
Yeah.
So, you can curse me all you want that I have a CR10 Max that doesn't get used as much as it should, but I've helped a ton in the CR10 community working through issues because I have experience with it and I know what to do to get them going again, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
and if they have a problem with it, you can be like, well, hold on for a second. Let me try to fix this.
That's why, I'm not bragging here or whatever, but I've got the CR200B and I've got the Sermon D1. They're in early production, testing the different states with the community, but I'm generating either Thingiverse models or direct feedback to Creality to make them an effective printer for the users. Like the CR200B, if we go to, it's a direct drive extruder, And they went initially with a roller to get the filament up over the side and just let it free come into the workhead. When you get the far side, it's pulling over on it too hard and it stops it from extruding because it's just bound up too much, right? I drilled a hole in there for PTFE and I ran PTFE from the one side over. It works awesome, right? It's an easy fix. It may be what Creality does for their final fix, or I've got some other stuff that we're working on that might be the final fix. But that machine is about as close to play as you're going to get to like the equivalent of an Ultimaker. Now, granted, it's 200, 200, 200, but that machine, put it in a school or whatever, they can put their slice files in there and go. The only thing that they don't really have that can be put in later is that Creality Cloud thing, like you're talking about, where you just pick the picture and then it goes to the machine. Right. And that machine will be capable of that. I mean, we're right there, right? I mean, that machine's capable of receiving it. I just personally haven't set it up to do it, right? But that one comes fully assembled, right? I think I had to put on. I guess that wasn't one. One of them came fully assembled, one didn't. But anyhow, they're close enough to fully assembled that your average person shouldn't have any problems. They're simpler than an Ender 3 for the mechanical part, because once you put them together, there was no adjustment. Like I have my guide on how to adjust eccentric wheels and gantries and stuff on the Ender 5s and the CR3s or whatever. But these, their mechanics and their build are set. You don't have to adjust that anymore. You just set it up and it'll print. You know, so we're making advancements. Now, is that the printer for everybody? No, I'm not going to tell you it's the printer for everybody. But in a school environment where you don't want little kindergartners or third graders sticking their fingers in the machine, it's got an enclosure. It'll print. It'll do everything they want to do. It's good to go, right? And it's exactly. And I don't know what the price point is, and don't hate me for not knowing the price point for a printer I own. But you know, I think it's in that 400-ish range. And if I'm wrong, don't kill me, but around that. And for a school or whatever, that's a great price. You know, they could even probably have a couple in certain labs in their budget or whatever, and have a great time with it. You know, so
yes. Somebody says, hope in these forums there will be a good setup library that sort of compiles or guides. Example, BLT, AVL for Ender 3 etc. So it will be easier to look for. Thank you for your advice, and we will definitely work towards it in the future.
Yes.
When we have more like guides in our library. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I think it'll be great to have it organized. I will tell you that depending on where you buy your thing at, what generation of Ender 3 you have, and all that, there's like I don't remember all the permutations, but we'll say for simplicity, there's 6 different ways that same thing can happen. So there is no exact answer for that one question, right? So I'll do what I can with my knowledge in the forum when I get a chance to get in there and do some work. So maybe we can stratify it and say, hey, this is the best advice for this series of printer with these options, right? And we'll try and break it out a little bit so you can see find what is for your printer and your needs. Currently, Teaching Tech has some awesome stuff for that. I got to give that guy props. He has done a ton of work to generate for stuff. He and I are not at loggerheads, but there's sort of it's when people ask for help on E-steps and calibration, they either get my help guide and Edutech's videos on E-steps and extrusion multiplier, or they get the guide that he set up and his website or whatever. I mean, they're great resources, right? And we'll make sure that those are available, obviously, in the community. But yeah, we'll do our best to make it so you can find what you need. The BL Touch setup right now is the biggest non-extrusion based issue that I'm dealing with people, and the second half of that is basically within the last, don't get me wrong on the timeline, but we'll say 7 months ago, I think it was, that we got the first of our new 4-point-something series boards, the new 32-bit boards. And some of the older kits are not working well with them and figuring all that out. And plus, the whole community is in the learning curve of setting up the firmware for the new 32-bit boards and all that. So it's improving as we go.
Yes.
Can I answer the linear rate? Oh, you grabbed the right question. The linear rails update for Ender 3s. Okay, so I'm going to upset some of the modders right here, right now. And I have added linear rails to machines. I actually have a linear rail. You probably can't see it, but on my Ender 5 Pro, I added one on the far side of the bed so it doesn't cantilever bounce so much. But here's the deal with it with linear rails, because there's some really high-end machines that have linear rails, and they are accurate in their direction of movement, and they are really cool. But one of the things that makes the nice, clean finish that you got out of a Creality printer is the fact that you have POM wheels on your drive axis, okay? So it acts like a shock absorber for any noises in the room, in the machine, in the table. If it gets a noise or a vibration or whatever happens in your house, it doesn't go into the finish of your part because you have a little mini shock absorber in a couple places stopping that noise from making it into the surface finish of your part, right? When you go to a linear rail, that shock absorber is gone. The only way to fix that is to then put essentially like a vibration dampener between your shuttle for your main work head and the print head, and now you're also adding a place where you can create oscillation or ghosting in your direction changes if you're moving too fast.
So Luke,
Go ahead.
you've definitely upset me with that one, but here's why. I think linear rails are fantastic. I think they're much better at it than those Delrin wheels. And if you're worried about your shock absorption and absorbing vibrations from the environment, the solution should be on your frame. That you should have a somewhat flexible footing on your frame, not where your motor is trying to tell your print head to go a certain direction accurately. So I would say I love the upgrade, but get yourself some shock absorbing feet for your printer, because Luke is right. It becomes more rigid and it translates those vibrations and motions into your print if you don't do that.
So I might get myself in a little trouble with this, but I would throw out this challenge. Show me a print that's a better print quality than I can generate out of a well-tuned Ender 3 with one that has linear rails, and then I will change my opinion. Because I have yet to have one of those people do that conversion and show me better print quality day in and day out doing it that way versus the other. And I get it.
Let me put this back to you. I will show you better printing on a linear rail system out of the box than any Ender 3 out of the box. I mean, you say, hey, put your thing up against my fine-tuned high-end machine. I'm not gonna, come on, man. I'm not gonna do that. But you give me stock out of the box, and a linear rail will beat those Delrin wheels every day.
Okay, here, we'll go a different tack on this. That same guy, what's his name? I don't have his name down. The guy who asked the question, I can't even pronounce his name. We're gonna go with Sinnes, because I don't know how to pronounce his name properly.
Singes. Yeah, we're going to just go with that. Okay. It looks like he's European.
So he can spend less than 1/10 of the time, go to my help guide, just do my basic tuning, eccentric wheel adjustment, my bed stabilization mod, and my hot end fix, and his prints will be better than if he buys $80 worth of linear rails, has to print all this stuff, put it all together to get back to the same point that he's at now.
Okay, I might agree with you on that one, but only because, again, I like stock.
Now, if he bought a machine that had the linear rails with it and it was already set up, great, right? There's a company that makes a rigid metal frame one that will smoke my well-tuned one, and it's the only one that I didn't mention because it's a $1,600 printer that's made by a U.S. manufacturer, and it's unobtainium for most of the users, right? They're not going to go spend $1,600 for it, So anyhow, I only brought it up just to highlight where you're going. So as an example, we've been talking about teaching tech. he did a video. He did the linear rail conversion on a machine. He did before and after prints between the two. After he spent all the time and energy into putting the linear rails on, the prints weren't any better than the machine when he started out, right? So you got to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Are you doing it to be cool? Or are you doing it to have better print quality? Or can you use your time to use your existing thing and refine it to get that quality? It's just sort of your tack on.
Let's be completely fair, though. It is very cool.
Yeah. It is. The cool factor's through the roof, right? Like if I didn't have all these printers and everything going on, and all I had was the Ender 5 Plus, which is my favorite printer, I'd probably have it all linear rail kitted out and done to the nines, because that would be my only printer, and I'm putting all my resources into it. And then I'd argue back, well, I can put a little vibration dampener in there and set it on a bed that has weighted bricks under it, so it can't be seismically moved in the room, and you can't beat that, right? But that's not what we're talking about. No. I'm talking about what your average Ender 3 user that's paid, let's say if the base Ender 3, I'm just going to call it a $180 printer. You can take the $180 printer, you can take the free guidance that's already available, you just click, go to that page and get it. Spend literally, I think I timed it one time, taking my time. If you take it really, really, really slow, it takes 2 hours to do everything that I offer to max out what that machine is capable for alignment and tuning, right? Or you can spend 2.5 weeks doing all these linear rails. Then when he gets the holes drilled, then things don't line up right. And then now he's got parts that are out of square and all this stuff. And now he's got to find a special adapter to use his hot end because the designer that did that kit didn't work for him or whatever. If that's you, if you just got to tinker. I mean,
exactly. It's just
sure,
that's what you're doing. It's just I want to tinker. Okay, good.
But when somebody comes to me, as I'm not going to call myself an expert because there's people that are even more knowledgeable than me out there, a few of them. But if you're going to come to me for advice, I'm going to give you what I see as the most sense for the time and money spent, right? And I'm not even weighing money over time. I mean, if somebody offered and bona fide, I know that they can bolt it on and they can improve their print quality, awesome kit to improve that machine for $100 with everything they needed to do to make it a linear rail Ender 3, I'd recommend them tomorrow. But right now, nobody's offering that, right? You got Ender extenders to make it bigger and they do all these other things, but nobody sells a linear rail kit for them because nobody's showing the community that by adding linear rails that they're getting any better print quality than what good quality tuning and stuff can do now, right? So I'm not saying don't do it, but why are you doing it? If you're doing it just to get better print quality, maximize what you got. What you learn from that tuning and calibration, that'll even play when you're doing your linear rails. You'll know more about what you're trying to align, why you're trying to align it, these kinds of things, which will make you a better person in the space for maintaining your equipment, right? So, and you're going to get people to come in new. What can I buy to hot rod this thing? And I want all of it now, right? And those are the guys like we talked about. They get there, they've done so many mods to it, and they can't get it to work. And they're like, can you help me? And I'm sorry for you, but if I come across a post like that, I kid you not, I just keep on moving. I don't even come in to try and help because they have taken themselves to a place that I can't help them from, right? And it's not that I hate them or whatever, but I could spend my next 4 weeks on straightening the mess that they made, right? Or what I choose to do is I go help.
A response to that one, and the response is take it back to stock and then start adding things one at a time. That's science.
Yeah, that's great thing, and that's an undercurrent thing in the community because you get the guys, what do I need to buy to put it in? And then we have that needed voice in the community that says, you can buy all these things, but get it together and get it running first. Make sure everything works first. Make sure you understand it first. Then let's start adding these kits in and doing this or doing that. So here's something that I need to bring up since we're having a pretty well-rounded conversation about add-ons and things that do or don't help the machines, right? The BL Touch. We've been talking about it for a while. We got people putting a BL Touch on a printer because they're not getting repeatable first layers, right? And call this user bias on my part, but my experience has been that 90% of the time, either their bed eccentrics are loose, their ex-gantry eccentrics are loose,
Yes.
their ex-gantry is out of level, and because of that, it's what I call hitchhiking as it goes up, or jacking. It does this number, and it never does it the same way twice, right? Part of the reason, and don't take this wrong for TH3D, Tim at TH3D has supported me really well, and for a reason, because he'd have people that would say, my ABL system is not working. I just spent whatever it is for his kit, $65, $85, depending on what options you got, for the sensor that's supposed to be reliable to, less than 0.05 micron every time, right? And his kit is. I assure you that every kit that leaves his place is that accurate. But by having my guide to show them how to align the machine right so that the arm comes back to the same place after it's taken the measurement is what makes it work or not work long term, right? And I'm not taking credit for his work, right? I'm just saying if your machine's not repeating now, it's not going to repeat with his device until you take care of that mechanical problem. Then, yeah, if you got a bed that's got waves in it, then the software can work that out, and then you got a perfect everything every time, right? But if that workhead is not addressing the thing, so if it comes in this time and it trams it, and then it lifts up, and then when it comes back to print, it's at a different attitude, it's not going to be the same, right? So we have to have that mechanical part fixed before that BL Touch works.
I 100% agree with you. You got to walk before you can run. You got to make sure that the hardware is properly aligned before the BL Touch. The BL Touch will not take a machine that cannot level its bed properly and start giving you good print. What the BL Touch will do is make it so that you never have to level your bed again. But if you're not getting a good print to begin with, the BL Touch isn't going to do any good. Now, the one machine that I've used a BL Touch on that I was really impressed with the BL Touch on its bed couldn't be leveled because it was super rigid. It had 2 linear rails on linear guides. They were smooth rods, and there was just no leveling this bed. And the BL Touch just came in and said, "Okay, here's where the bed is, and here's where the bed is forever going to be."
So you haven't had I don't think you've had the experience of the CR6 SE. So
no,
we went to a rigid bed. Okay. So once you adjust the bed eccentrics, you have a rigid bed. It doesn't move anymore. So the hot end has a strain gauge in it, and it comes down and it actually touches the nozzle to the bed with the strain gauge. So it is zeroing at the bed, and it does it heats it up and it probes the whole bed, and it does its leveling that way. And right now, if you want to buy a Creality printer with a bed leveling system that works all the time, every time, buy that. I've had 5 users that had problems, and can you guess why those 5 users had problems with that system not working?
Because they changed something?
Because they put too much weight on one end and knocked that gantry out of alignment enough that Marlin won't let it correct more than 2 millimeters. That's the only reason that it had a problem. So I've got the news out to the community. If you got this problem, do my X gantry rework, because it works on that machine too, and you're back in business, right? So yeah.
So well, I thank you to have so many things we'd like to share the audience, but I think it's time to go.
All right.
Yeah, I'm about turning into a pumpkin myself. Getting tired.
Yeah, we didn't beat too many dead horses, so
no, we did good. That's a fun
conversation.
Always a fun conversation with you, Luke.
Yeah, and I like that you didn't just agree with me on the whole linear rail thing. I want adversarial opinions, and don't get me wrong. I don't hate linear rails. If they're done properly, they're perfectly fine, right? It's just I see them being misapplied or as offered as a cure to other problems that they're not, right? So that's my warning about linear rails. If you only have one machine and that's what you want to do, put them on there. It'll be fun.
Okay.
Okay, I think so. That's it. Thank you, guys, being here with us and chat with us. And I think we have a really nice talk here, and we also learned a lot from you guys. And thanks all the audience here as well. And see you next time.
See you next
Right.
time.
See
Yeah.
you.
Soon.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Have a good night.